So often as leaders, we have good intentions, but our impact is not what we want. Have you ever had a conversation that didn't turn out the way you expected, or made a decision that didn't go the way you thought? Our job as leaders is to create an environment where people want to give their best effort, where they want to be engaged, where they want to do their best work. I started studying this topic of neuroscience because I wanted to be able to close the gap between my intentions and my impact. I was really proud of the fact that I was goal-oriented, really good at getting things done. But I need to do a better job at creating positive relationships, not only in my business, but my personal life. You see, because none of us can get everything we need done by ourselves. We need teams. We need teams in our families, in our churches, in our communities, and in our business. And as far as I can tell, the team exists for just one purpose, and that's to produce results. Now, the best teams produce results sustainably, again and again, not 1 week, not just 1 month, 1 year, but year after year. And in order for that to happen, there has to be conditions on the team. There has to be a positive environment. As a matter of fact, you have to have at least 5 positive for every 1 negative interaction that you have. If your relationships and your team is not performing at the level that you want, who can we really blame? We get to look in the mirror. Now, I want to share with you a model that measures productivity and positivity on the team. This is a model that I use to identify where you are at in terms of that productivity. Now, think about a team that measures high on productivity but measures very low on positivity. What's that like? It's all about productivity over people's relationships. It's a grind. I mean, we're pushing hard, and it's not sustainable because people burn out. They get tired. They get frustrated. On the other hand, what's that like to be on a team that's all about positivity at the expense of productivity? It's fun. We're excited. We don't want to change. We don't want to rock the boat. That is not sustainable either. Now, of course, the worst is when we're at low productivity, low positivity, and we measure that, we're out of business very, very quickly. Where we want to get to is high productivity and high positivity. And this is where we are able to hold ourselves and others accountable, where we're not settling for good enough, where we're striving always for more. It's hard to get here. But think about what's going on right now. I have 2 family members that are in this quadrant. I have a son. My young son is a manager. He's 21 years old. He's a manager for United Parcel Service at a hub in the United States. He had a great manager of his division who got promoted. Well, the new divisional manager is all about numbers, not about relationships. She doesn't come around and talk to any of them. They don't have trust. They don't have relationships. And people started quitting. They couldn't keep their people, and so they couldn't maintain the productivity. My daughter graduated as a nurse from a great program last December, and she's been working at a large hospital in the medical surgery for orthopedic surgery, and under normal circumstances, you're supposed to have 4 patients for every 1 nurse. She has 6. And as a result, nurses are leaving. They're burned out. They can't keep it up. And she, instead of working full-time, just went to part-time because she can't take the stress. Think about the environment on your team. Are you able to sustain high productivity? Now, obviously, there's a time when we need to just focus on results, but we can't sustain it ever. There's also a time for us to celebrate and have a good time, but we can't stay there also. This idea of positivity comes from some great leaders, Annie Boyatzis, Annie McKee, Daniel Goleman. They said the fundamental task of leaders is to prime good feelings in those they lead. And that occurs when a leader creates resonance, a reservoir of positivity that frees the best in people. At its root, then, the primal job of leadership is emotion. This is what we get to do, is to create that environment. But it's difficult under pressure. And how many of you are under pressure? Think about the challenges that you have to deal with right now, and staying positive under pressure is a challenge. Some of us, like me, we get defensive or we get assertive, or some of us actually shut down and avoid conflict. Some of us have to be right. We get really stubborn. Some of us overtalk and just become overselling. And these behaviors can prevent us from having the results that we want. If you feel like you have good intentions, but yet you're late to work, for example. Why are you late to work? Because something important came up that you had to take care of. But somebody else comes late and it's like, well, they're lazy. They don't care as much as you do. This is what's called the fundamental attribution error, is attributing behavioral intent to others based on their impact on you. But you judge yourself not by your impact, but by your intentions. This is something that will prevent you from having the success that you want to have. I want to share with you this balance of task and relationship. As a leader, your job is to manage the task. Yes, you have to do that, but it's also to manage those relationships so that you can sustain your ability to do the task. But if you get so focused on the task, what happens is relationship takes a back seat, and it makes it unsustainable. I want to give you some personal examples. You see, as a CEO in my company, I told you I was focused on solving problems, and my administrative assistant, Lucretia, was fantastic. She was so helpful. And I remember we have people come from all over the world to come to our trainings. And so on class days, the office is very, very busy. I had a problem that I needed Lucretia's help with, and I came out on the class day and I said, hey, Lucretia, could you take care of this thing for me? She said, of course. But I didn't realize how stressed she was or how frustrated she was with everything that she was working on. But she didn't want to tell the CEO no and turn me down. And so at the end of the day, I saw that she was so busy and that the task I gave her hadn't gotten done. So I walked up to her and I said, hey, Lucretia, did you finish the task? She says, no, I'm so sorry. I go, that's okay. When do you think you could have it done? She says, I'll have it done by tomorrow. I said, that's great. Now, I apologized in the situation and tried to be more aware. But what happens if I do that again and again and again, because I'm so focused on what I need that I'm not aware of how I'm impacting my team? Eventually, Lucretia loses her engagement, her enthusiasm, her desire to help me. Did you compare yourself to others by, have you ever had the right fight where you knew you were right and you're having an argument with someone else and they know they're right? No one's getting anywhere. That's what's going on in our culture right now, is everybody wants to be right. But it's not about, we've learned that in our elementary school, in our high schools, in our college, we've learned that we have to have the right answers. We're so busy being right that, again, we're not connecting. How many of you know people that were incredibly technically proficient or had a great resume and they get hired because of that, but yet they get fired for their behavior? According to HR.com, 90% of us are hired for our skill, but 90% of us are fired because of that behavior, because of our lack of awareness. So the key to understanding others, to having the impact you want to have, is to first understand yourself. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You can self-assessments, many of you have them, that's great. But we get to be more aware, more mindful of how we show up. 1/3 of your financial results come from the climate in your organization. That's all about business results. That's what we're talking about. Now, this is hard. Why is it hard? Because when it comes to our behavior, it's more our opinion. It's more subjective. It's not as objective as data, as results. And what happens to us under pressure is, this is where our reputations as leaders are made. I love this saying by the Roman Epicurus: skillful pilots gain their reputations from storms and tempests. Well, we're definitely in storms and tempests. How are you showing up? I could tell you story after story of challenges that I've had, but the good news is you can learn. Even though you're under pressure with deadlines, with stress, with anxiety, with expectations, with conflict, with all the challenges that you have. Under those circumstances, what happens is our brain, our thinking brain, our neocortex, is overridden by our emotional brain. Under normal circumstances, we have what's called a 4-factorial brain. A factor of 4 is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, that's 24. So we have the ability to think up 24 different responses and 4 complex ideas. But if we get slightly stressed and we lose one of our factorials, basically what happens is the brain is rerouted from your thinking brain to your emotional brain, and you're just slightly stressed. A factor of 3, 3 times 2 times 1 is 6. We've just lost 75% of our ability to think clearly. Why do sometimes your conversations and decisions don't turn out the way you intend? Because under pressure, we are cognitively impaired. That's the neuroscience. Anybody can be a good leader when things are going well. But when I took over that company and things were going poorly, I was under a tremendous amount of strain and stress, and I didn't always handle it the best way. In 2016, my son, Josh, with the socks that I was telling you about, called me. He said, Dad, he was just taking my other son, Sam, to his friend's house, and he was coming home. He said, Dad, I got into an accident. I said, are you okay? He said, yes. I said, where are you? He was literally a stone's throw from our house, right around the corner. He was changing the music on his phone, and he drove off the road. Luckily, there was nobody on the sidewalk, and he tried to correct it, and he ran into this tree, poor tree. The tree is still there. It lived. The car did not. And I said, I'll be right there. And I got to Josh, and he was shaking. He was so upset. He has never done that again with the phone. Gets mad at me if I'm on my phone while I'm driving. And I gave him a hug, and I said, it's okay. You can replace the car. And I got in the passenger side because I couldn't get in the driver's side. And I said, but I've got to take care of some things now. And so I called the insurance company and, the police, whatever. And the neighbors were driving by and yelling out for help. And I'm like, got it under control. Cause now I was back in task mode, right? It's like, don't talk to me now. I'm focused on problems. And when my oldest daughter, Emily, heard about this, she was living in Texas at the time. She called my wife, Jana. She said, I just heard what happened. Is Josh okay? What did Dad do? And she was worried about Josh and how I might have handled that, because 10 years earlier when she got in an accident, it wasn't as a positive. I didn't yell at her, but she told me when I came to the scene, I was so focused on the task, I didn't talk to her. And she was distraught. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better leader, a better husband. I want to have a better impact with the people in my life. That's why I started working on this. I am so grateful that you gave me the time to talk to you. And I know that what happens as leaders is that we have to make decisions every day, hundreds of them. And under pressure, what happens is the emotional brain wants to keep us stuck in the past, that habit or that pattern that we've developed that is preventing us from having the results or the relationships, just focusing on tasks. And I can tell you so many stories about that. But what we're talking about now is when something happens, when Danny comes, knocks on your door and says, hey, can I talk to you about something I'm concerned about? When I'm clearly thinking, I'm thinking about what is the impact I'm going to have? How will I say this in a way that will encourage him and motivate him? How will I be able to treat my son so that he knows that I love him? How can I treat my wife, Jana, better? That moment is always in the present. You have a choice to be controlled by your emotions and your good intentions versus thinking about the impact and choosing to behave. You have positive intentions. Those are good, but it's your behavior and being mindful, being aware that actually gets that impact and develops that trust. That's what leadership is all about, is creating an impact that moves the organization, moves your project forward. These skills that I'm telling you can help you to match your good intentions with your impact. Close that gap by becoming aware of how you show up under pressure. Now, is this going to solve all the problems that you have? No. But if you're having supply chain issues, or you can't hire enough people, your turnover is too high, start by working on yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so grateful that we had some time this afternoon, that you stuck it out after 2 days. You're like, I am done. I don't want to watch anymore. I'm glad that you came. I hope you have some questions, Marion. I know we have an extra 5 minutes, and I'd love to be able to answer a few if we have some.
Yeah, I'd like to first start out saying that the audience overwhelmingly has said thank you for being authentic and showing real raw emotion, especially when it came to your kids. Everybody really appreciates it. I got goosebumps just talking about it. So you're amazing. Thank you, Spencer.